Hello, everybody. Welcome to week one of the summer semester. I'm recording this video right after the introductory video, so that's why I'm wearing the same shirt. I'm looking very Amish, I guess, today in my sort of plaid, and my beard is looking especially Amish. Amish. I need to say Amish because I'm from Indiana originally, and we say things really strangely over there. Italian, Amish, right? So I'm kind of betraying my Indiana, my Hoosier roots by saying Amish. Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. I hope you're having a great start to your summer semester and your summer in general. What I want to talk about today, a little bit in this very first module video, is a little bit of context for the Enlightenment. What is the Enlightenment? Well, you're going to read all about it this week in the week one readings. But what I thought might be helpful, especially if you've not taken History 101, is to give you sort of an idea of where our timeline starts, where our class starts in history, because that might be a little helpful for you to understand. And then I'll talk a little bit about the historical documents for this week, the first set of historical documents that you'll be reading in this class. And I'll talk a little bit about that without giving away too many spoilers, because you'll have to do some work for these documents. I don't want to give away the candy store all at once. So the Enlightenment comes basically in the wake of a few different historical developments that are kind of important, and they're kind of helpful to know. So if you haven't taken History 101, History 101 at Lincoln Land is one of the other classes I teach, and my colleagues teach. And basically that starts with the beginning of everything, like prehistory, like the development of Homo sapiens out of Africa and moving past the Paleolithic and Neolithic periods and Neanderthals and all that. That starts there, and it goes all the way to what's called the early modern period in history. We call basically the period that starts with the Enlightenment and has concluded with a few different important events as the early modern period. So we're looking at like 1600s or so to start out, okay? It's like 1600s, 1700s, thereabouts. And the early modern period and the Enlightenment kind of follow in the wake of a few different important things that have just happened in Western history. One of these is the Protestant Reformation. So the sundering of the Catholic Church into multiple parts. Obviously, we still have Roman Catholicism. Today, it was not like it broke during the Reformation of the 1500s. But it did split. Several people split off of the Roman Catholic Church and started their own churches, like Martin Luther started Lutheranism. John Calvin started Calvinism, or what became Calvinism. And we get the Anabaptists and all these other things. But basically, the importance of this is that there's no longer any kind of religious uniformity in the West. There's a few different ways of practicing Christianity, which is what most people are at the time, right? At least nominally Christian in some way. And people are still coming to terms with that idea that once we had this big sort of slightly happy Roman Catholic Church, happy family, all united, until people weren't happy and they split off. So that's one important development that happens leading up to the Enlightenment. And Enlightenment thinkers are oftentimes thinking of ways to reconcile that split with human nature and kind of the ideas of progress and freedom and freedom of thought and expression and things like that. So the Reformation's a big one. Also, another thing that happened before that was the Renaissance. The Renaissance was this period of artistic and intellectual expression that was unlike anything that came before it. The Renaissance basically ushers in the end of the medieval period. So by the time we start looking at this class and the Enlightenment, we're looking at the end of the medieval period and the start of the early modern period, because the Renaissance ushered in completely new ways of thinking about humanity through art, but also in an intellectual way. there's the rise of what's called humanism, which is basically looking at human beings as good, inherently good and full of potential, rather than broken, sinful, nasty creatures that are nothing without Jesus Christ. So humanism ushers in this period of like rethinking what it means to be human. And the Enlightenment picks up on that idea and runs with it, as you'll find out in your readings for this week very quickly. And then the final thing I want to talk about to contextualize the Enlightenment is the scientific revolution. The scientific revolution includes guys like Copernicus coming up with the heliocentric model of the universe, where the sun is the middle of things instead of the earth. That really shakes people's understanding of reality. Galileo invents, or sort of perfects, I guess, the telescope, which increases the extent to which we can gaze into space, and he discovers there are things like moons orbiting Jupiter, and like all of a sudden the world and the universe is a lot bigger than people originally thought during the ancient period and the medieval period. So that blows people's minds, right? But there's also things like the theory of gravity and advanced physics and mathematics pioneered by Isaac Newton and other guys. And basically, the scientific revolution was a period where people sort of looked at what they had gotten wrong in science for a very long time. And it's new discoveries and new forms of knowledge being produced all the time. So people's minds are being blown by the scientific revolution, by the Renaissance, and by the Reformation. So now we start the early modern period with the Enlightenment, and people are really digging in to this basic theme, which is this. If we got other stuff wrong, if we got so many things wrong in the past, like religion, like, or at least dogmatic religious thinking, everyone's still religious at this time. If we got religion wrong, we got science wrong, we got things like art and literature wrong, what else do we have wrong? Or another way of putting it is, what can we do better as a society, as a Western civilization? What else can we improve upon besides art and science and spirituality? What else can we make better? And that's basically the Enlightenment in a lot of ways. So some of the guys that you're going to be reading, both in the textbook, you'll get a good overview of the Enlightenment in your textbook for this week, but also the source documents for Module 1. Guys like Charles de Montesquieu, he's a French Enlightenment thinker, where he thinks about law and justice. We've done things for a certain way for a very long time, with kings just kind of proclaiming law. How could we make that better? Who does law serve? How could we make laws serve the common good rather than just the whims of the king? Jean-Jacques Rousseau is another guy you'll read a short selection of. He has this idea of law as being kind of a social contract. His big idea is the social contract. It's the idea that a people have this kind of unspoken, unwritten contract with the government, that the government's going to look out for the general good and general will of the people. And in return, people give up some of their natural liberties, like the right to violence, the right to like steal and kill. Like these are sort of natural rights that are hemmed in by law. Well, what happens when the government sucks? Is what Rousseau starts to think about. What happens when the government stops upholding its end of the bargain in this social contract and stops looking out for the general will and general good of the people? What should the people do in response to that? Which is kind of where you get Thomas Jefferson, who is a huge reader and contemporary of Rousseau. And Thomas Jefferson is the draftee of the Declaration of Independence. So you start to see, thinking about, if we got all these things kind of mistaken in the past, or we're rethinking and trying to do better in a lot of different ways, science, spirituality, art, what else can we improve upon in Western civilization? That's the Enlightenment, where thinkers start looking at politics. They start looking at um, society in a broad scope, and trying to think about ways in which we can do better than the kind of old ways of the past. So that's where our class starts out, is these guys, and they're mostly men, old, white, dead men now, who nonetheless, uh, if they were not diverse in their intellectual body politique, they were at least diverse in their ways of thinking, which is how can we make things better? So that's the Enlightenment. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave the rest of it for you guys to explore in your textbook and in the historical documents. If you have any questions, let me know about these. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy reading about the Enlightenment. And make sure to do the textbook reading quiz in the first analysis paper by the end of Sunday. You simply do these things on Canvas, or in the case of the paper, you can write it on Canvas directly, or you can upload like a Word document or a PDF to Canvas. Make sure you definitely look up those sources of the resources, I'm sorry, that I give you, the analysis paper template to figure out how to sort of properly structure your very short paper. And also the sample papers. Definitely take a look at those before you start writing. And by the way, don't use any outside sources when you write this short paper. Only use Rousseau, Jefferson, Montesquieu, the documents that I'm giving you to answer these questions. All right, guys, have a great first week, and let me know if you have any questions. I'll see you back here for week 2.